Matt, I've got a big problem I want to talk about with you.
Oh, no, this sounds heavy. Go ahead.
Dude, reinspections, man.
Yeah.
I mean, we complain about this on the phone, but they drive me up the wall. Right? How do you
Yeah,
feel
man.
about them?
I mean, I think that number one, I think that this is a topic that is not talked about enough in our industry. I definitely have some pain points that I want to discuss in terms of re-inspections. And I have a feeling our guest is going to be able to weigh in a little bit on this today too.
I think so because he is the king of calling out the absurd, and I mean at this stage of his career, nothing surprises him. So you know, other Brad, welcome back, man.
What's up, guys? What's up?
What's
Yeah,
up?
you're talking about one of my most favorite subjects. It's
And you
what I
have a
like to call
roster of favorites.
yeah, but I like to call this take the money and run. Do
Okay.
yourself a favor and don't let the seller fix it. Because
Yeah,
somehow
yeah,
it ends up more screwed up the second time when you go
man,
back. And it's like,
Right.
guys, we should have just left this alone.
yeah. That is exactly what
It would
happened.
have been
A-
better
And
if you just hadn't touched it.
And that's one of
Yeah.
the pain points, that's actually, I mean, I think like I have a hard time directing people to do this because I feel like I'm doing a realtor's job. But when it comes to like resale homes and re-inspections, you know, that just means that they've asked somebody who couldn't care less if the repairs are done right or quality. They just want the cheapest out possible.
They
And
always
then
do.
you got somebody on the other end buying this house that really is interested in the quality. And you got us inspecting houses and we're inspecting for quality as well. And so those things aren't really seeing eye to eye with the person who just went bottom dollar and got the worst possible repairs done, that they could get. So,
Oh,
yeah,
there's
man,
so many
that's
other
definitely one.
So many other avenues to this too. And guys, sound off in the comments. If you first of all, if you don't subscribe, if you haven't subscribed to the show, you need to subscribe to the show. If you don't follow us on social media, you need to go there and do that. I mean, you've got two of the kings of home inspection social media right here on the show today. But so go follow them, but chime in on this conversation because this is one of those things, Matt. There's a whole category of things that we talk about on the phone when we're just kind of like bitching and
Yeah.
complaining about the job. But I mean, y'all have had to deal with this. If you've been inspecting for several years, you've had it happen where you're fine with taking the reinspection because you just need the work, but then you get too dadgum busy, and now you're going back for a fraction of the price, and that's eating into what could be another inspection. Or you've got builders that like you've brought this up. They don't hardly do the repairs that they talk about doing anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we have to break it down a little bit because, reinspection, first of all, let's define re-inspections. Okay. Most of the time, what that means is that a client is buying a house, whether it's new or an existing home, and either the builder or the homeowner has taken on doing some repairs. And that means that after those repairs are done, these homeowners that didn't know anything about this house before they had us come in there now want us to go back and look and make sure those things have been done, or at least they've been done as noted as they said they would do them. Now, when this comes to new construction, it's significantly different because, well, let's start with the resale stuff. So resale stuff, and this is really to me, this has been the one pain point I've had here lately. Um, Resale stuff is pretty easy because for the most part, the realtors put together an amendment of things that they want repaired. Now, I'm gonna go back to what Brad said because I wish we wouldn't even do these repairs. I wish they would just take some money off the house, position themselves financially so that the buyer can handle these repairs. That way they can manage the quality. But that's a perfect world, and I'm just not going to find myself in that anytime soon. I understand that. I like to think that we could start shifting that direction, but that's another topic altogether. But you get this amendment and it's got 4 or 5 things on it. Okay. We got a door that doesn't lock. We got a toilet that doesn't flush. We got a dishwasher that doesn't work. And we got a hole in the roof next to the chimney. These 4 items, and it's like, it's very cut and dry. I need you to go back and check these 4 items. Well, that makes sense. So I got to go back for, and this is where it gets complicated is because we're doing these re-inspections. Well, they're for a discounted fee. Well, what's that fee? Because most of the time, if we're as home inspectors, we're usually doing 2 inspections a day, but there's an awful lot of times where these re-inspections can cut right into that second inspection and end
Mhm.
up costing us money instead of making, two $500 inspections. We got one $500 inspection, and I'm just paraphrasing, just using that as an example. And then whatever we charge for a reinspection, that varies a lot. I don't think we talk about that enough in our industry. But it's like, okay, so I go here for this discounted rate, and it's like, okay, if I got an amendment and I got like 4 or 5 items on it, that makes sense to do it at a discounted rate. It's possible that if I'm busy enough that I'm like, all right, that's an easy afternoon. I'll take it. Right. But most of us would rather make a full fee instead of going and making a partial fee. But I digress. But when it comes to new construction, and I think given that that Brad, you've been in construction, I think you'll be able to weigh in a lot on this too. But like when it
Yeah.
comes to like new construction, these people don't even have a realtor usually, so they don't have anybody to guide them. We give them a
Right.
report, and we end up, writing up 30 things. And when we say, "Well, what did you want me to reinspect?" They're like, "Well, everything that was
All of it.
deficient.
Yeah.
The builder
All
said
of
they're
it.
going to fix it all." And it's like, "Well, hold on a minute. When I do these for a resale home, I got like 4 or 5 items I got to check. Now I got 30, 40 items, and basically it feels like I'm getting punished for doing my job well." Because
Pretty
I
much.
found all this stuff. Now I'm being punished.
Yeah. So I know when it comes to the new construction stuff, it's just like you said, they've got 30 or so items they want you to reinspect. And I try to lay the groundwork because in a perfect world, we go by there, we get in and out, right? Because we do have full schedules. So I'll try to lay the groundwork and tell people, like, guys, do you really need me to look at the missing door? Can you not see that they have installed a door now?
It's either here or it's not.
Like, right. So let's stick to the things that you're probably not comfortable looking at, like the roof, the electrical, the attic, things like that. But missing doorknobs and places where there's missing trim, like that's part of the walkthrough. So I try to preface it and tell people that, using 30 items, let's say that 22 of those are punch list items. These are things that the builder was going to do anyway. It's on somebody's list. They just haven't done it yet. And then the other 8 items, let me go back and check. And then you try to save people from themselves, and they will tell you time and time again, no, I want you to look at all of it. Okay, yes. So what I do is I charge $250. That's a trip fee. And that is good for up to 25 items.
Interesting.
And then anything additional after that's $8 a pop.
Oh,
And then
okay.
what that does though, because I mean, I've had houses where we're inspecting 35, 40 things. At least I'm not getting just completely obliterated on the price. Now, in Matt's example, if somebody tells me, hey, can you go back by and check these 6 things? I might do that for $100. But the 250 is out there just to let people know that it's 20 up to 25 items. If you want me to look at one or you want me to look at all 25, you're better off if we got 25 things to look at. Let me look at them. But that's how I handle it. Now, I'd love to tell you that I've got it figured out. But there's been days where I look at that fee and think, I should be charging $15 a pop after I 25. I've ruined my life. I can't make heads or tails of this stuff. But let's talk about the other part of this, right? Now you're in the middle. You've gone back and you've found something that is not up to par. Now, I don't know how you guys are, but for me, when I look at it the second time, I try to look at it like I've never seen it before. Now, if I'm looking at it the second time, would I have a problem with it? If the answer is no, we move on with our lives. But if the answer is yes, now we
You
got
make
to
a
discuss it.
video.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now we got to drag a contractor. But most recently, this came up with me. It was a house. The house wasn't bad in itself, but there were a couple of issues that were going on that were related to the electrical. One of them was a deteriorated electrical mast, and then the other was a loose outlet. And the buyer wanted these things corrected. So when I go back, instead of replacing the metal mast, they cut a piece of conduit, PVC conduit, and slipped it around the mast and then put flex tape on top of it. And then for the outlet, I've never seen anything like this. They took that same flex tape, it was probably 4 inches wide, right? And they put it over the outlet. And they removed the cover plate and put it over the outlet, and then they cut out the holes for the actual outlet itself, right? And then put the cover plate back on. But you could see the edges of the flex tape on the drywall. right? So obviously, me being the stickler for details that I am, I say, guys, I think we need to work on the electrical. Now, at the time that I say this, I don't know who did it. So I don't want to be too critical of the homeowner. There's people that still are trying to negotiate and make this deal work. But then I get a text from a realtor telling me that this was done by a very prestigious electrician in the area who's been in business a lot of years. What exactly do you have a problem with? And then I'm not going to bore you with the details of the whole text, but it went something like this. First off, flex tape. And
Yeah.
then it got a lot more detailed after that. But it puts inspectors in the middle of a situation that's unwinnable,
Right.
because a lot of times you don't get to this stage until you're ready to close. And now everybody's looking at us, like the seller's looking at us, like, why is this guy holding us up? The buyer's looking at us like, hey, is there anything else that they can do? And it's like, guys, if they were interested in doing this right to begin with, they've done it.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to find that spot where you can just kind of wipe your hands of it, because a lot of times you get drug into this thing. And there's been a couple times where I thought I was going to have to go to the closing with photos to make this thing work, because it always comes down to the last minute.
So I got some guys that I speak with about this kind of stuff on a regular basis, and a couple of them have written up some agreements in terms of their reinspects that basically say, look, they go into a lot of more detail than I'm going to go into right here, but it's basically saying, I'm going to go look at these items and I'm going to verify whether or not these items have been repaired, but I'm not verifying the quality of the repairs. So it's like, and I know that that's kind of a gray area a little bit, but they're just kind of throwing that disclaimer out there, because it's like you said, it's like you can walk up to something and be like, I mean, yeah, they did it.
Yeah.
They repaired it.
Yeah. They did
And there
something.
you go. And that's just
Right.
kind of what they have to do, because at what point are we calling out, especially on these uh, resale homes, craftsmanship? You know what I mean? Like that just pins us against some contractor. And I don't mind calling out craftsmanship stuff and being pinned against the builder on this kind of stuff on a new construction house. Cause it's like, hey guys, it's new. You know what I mean? Like
It's
do
brand
it
new.
right.
Just get it done. Yeah.
But when you've got these people going, no, we hired a licensed contractor to do
Yeah.
this, and then so it's got to be my word against their word. Like I'm not into that. So yeah, that I know what you mean, but I've oftentimes thought about like adding some verbiage like that to my reinspect form, just so that people know. Like, I mean,
That's a good idea.
yeah, I mean, there's got to be a line drawn here, because I mean, if you send me in to go start, you hire the cheapest people in the world to go do this work, and then you're allowing me to come back and reinspect it. I mean, I'm going to tell you it's wrong. It's almost always wrong. How many times have you walked into a reinspect, new or old, and been completely satisfied walking out of one?
No,
Honest question.
no,
It's
I
never
can't
happened.
remember a time.
And every time you
But
go
you,
back, you're at risk of seeing something that, not that you missed it the first
Totally.
time, but you're going to catch something. Like the more times you view something, the more like the worse it looks, right? The harder you
Yeah.
look at it, the worse it gets.
Well, when
But
you're there the first time, you're doing like this broad spectrum of stuff. When you narrow that down, things look different. And I
right.
mean, it just is what it is. Yeah, there's certainly been times where I walked in and I found something that I didn't see the first time. Was it there? I don't know. But it's like that now. And I feel like I got to say something.
Now, where's the line between customer service? Because you got your agent, your buyers, they'll call you for these, uh, and I've had it happen where an agent's called me multiple times about the same house, right? So you
oh, yeah,
charge that fee, but like, I mean, Brad, you work out in the middle of nowhere too. Like, I mean, I've been to properties that are an hour and a half away from me, and they want me to go
oh, yeah.
back. And I'm like, okay, well, for a reinspect, I will. But now you're going a second time, a third time. You thought it was fixed. You thought it was fixed. So at some point, can you just say no? Are you just sorry? I'm booked. I'm busy. Like, do you just, or do you keep honoring that agent in the relationship and keep going?
Well, I keep charging them the 250. So every time I go, it's 250 minimum. And new construction, which I hate to throw builders in the area under the bus, because for the most part, you know, we've all seen this before. Subcontractor tells the builder one thing, builder takes it as, the truth, and then we show up and find out that it's not done. So I know that that kind of stuff goes on, but yeah, there's been some new builds I've had to go to 3 or 4 times. I made more on the reinspection than I ever did on the original inspection.
Add it up.
Yeah,
Those subcontractors, they work at the same rate as a husband when the wife gives him a project. You know,
pretty much.
it'll get done by EOY, not EOW. You know, it's
Well, and then the other thing that goes on, talking about like the driving and stuff, like if we do have a full schedule, how many of these are we doing at the end of the day? Like there was one a few months ago. I didn't get finished with it until 9:30 at night. So I didn't get home until 10. And then it's not that you don't want to help your clients because obviously they hired you to do the initial inspection. They trust you, but it is hard to find that balance of, okay, my position in this is starting to become abused versus, I'm trying to help these guys do something, and it's tough. Like that's, talking about like my prices going back to earlier, that was something like when I got started, this is how naive I was. I was doing reinspects for free
Well, that's something I want to talk about.
until everybody had me reinspecting things. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
some of y'all
reclaiming my
still out here
time.
doing it. Yeah.
Right. And then I was doing them for $100. And, it wasn't like I was getting completely beat up on the $100 point. But when, I would do the new construction houses and they're making you go back 2 and 3 times. And I hate to sound like this was malicious, but I thought, you know what? If I make this cost enough to where people complain, then they're not going to be bringing me out here nickel and diming me, taking up my time to do these. And, like I said, I wish I could tell you that that's the perfect formula, but I don't know that it is. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that. And like Matt said, sometimes you're looking at 3 or 4 things. And then sometimes, like I did an inspection last week where the guy said, and this is no joke, we're talking on the phone, and you mentioned like blurring the lines between being an inspector and a realtor, because obviously, we're not trying to give real estate advice to people. But I had a client recently that said 60 something items on this house. It wasn't a bad house, just a lot of junk deficiency, small stuff. But he says, am I crazy to ask them to fix all of it? And I said, yeah, certifiable. They're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. I said, what you need to do is pick probably 10 or 15 things that you're adamant about and then work backwards from that. But that's the other thing is, when you ask the seller to fix things, you're money ahead trying to focus on like the big picture stuff, then trying to, because let's just say, for example, a seller has a number in their head that they're willing to do. Let's say it's $3,000 worth of repairs. You don't want that spread. You don't want them fixing a loose doorknob as part of that 3,000. You want them just spending that money on the roof or spending that money on the HVAC. And I think too, like, you know, obviously agents have to do the bidding of the buyers, but buyers would be better served if they would focus on like what's extremely important to them and then let everybody focus their effort and money on that and then just deal with the small stuff than trying to get the seller to do 20 things, because obviously they don't want to spend money to do 20 things. And that's when a lot of the DIY gets involved. And the DIY was why we were in this boat to begin with, So that part of it's tough.
Yeah,
Well,
DIY and deferred maintenance for sure.
I'm
it's difficult for me because it's like I want to help a buyer as much as possible. And so if I get that many callbacks, it's like if they're willing to pay, that's great. But like the very definition of our job is to help as many buyers as possible, because that's the
right.
only way that we can be profitable and continue to do what we do for as many people going forward. So it's like you can't get too bogged down. But the only other person that definitely doesn't want to get bogged down with this, like you're saying, Brad, is the seller. So it's just a higher risk of it getting done incorrectly at all, which takes us right back to your original point. Just let the buyer deal with it as soon as the
Come
transaction's
up with
done.
a number.
Yeah.
Find a number we can all agree on and move on.
That's the
Because
best.
that's the other thing, is dealing with people's expectations. Going back to Matt's point, right? I want to go back and look at this and I want to see if it's fixed. Now, I've got a different word for craftsmanship. I call it craftsmanship. But
I
if
can think of another one.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the tail end of that one. But, when you're dealing with that, it's like now, not only are you having to judge whether or not this is an acceptable repair, because not only does it have to be acceptable to me, it has to be acceptable to the person buying it. I don't know what they're looking for here. And it really does. It puts us in a tough spot. And like, Matt said, which I agree with, there probably should be more talk about certain verbiage or things that we can put in our agreements or things that we put in the report itself to kind of set the groundwork for, look, I'm not here to make sure that this meets your expectations. We're trying to answer questions like, is it functional? Is it still a problem? Does this work?
Hey,
Now, once those things are met, we're done.
if anybody watching has any verbiage that they use, drop it in the comments or send it to us. We'd like to have this conversation because I think that needs to be talked about amongst industry people here so that we can kind of get on the same page a little bit. I mean, we're never going to completely be there, but if we can just kind of start working our way a little bit closer. I mean, like, look, we're all doing things to some degree a little bit differently, right? And we all have our own pricing and stuff like that. But there is a lot of common ground. But I think like when it comes to reinspects, it's just all over the map. Now I feel like we've got to like focus a little bit of attention on the elephant in the room, which is price. Okay, because I think that really solves everything, right? How much we're getting paid actually fixes the whole thing. And to me, like, okay, so let's go back to when you said you used to do them free, Brad. I was doing a class. I was giving a class for some realtors recently, and one of the realtors in there said that she asked me about reinspects. I told her, yeah, we do them. And I told her what we charge, and she goes, well, the guy I'm using right now, he does them for free. And I don't want to throw dirt on any inspector, okay, but that's an indication to me that you're probably dealing with an inspector that's probably not very experienced. Because if they're experienced, then they're not giving their time away for free. And so it makes me kind of question you using them to begin with. Now, I don't want to throw any dirt at any inspector. They might do a fine job, and maybe they just feel that maybe that's built into their price somehow. I don't know
Or
how
they're
you.
new to the market. There's always that. I
Yeah, it
mean,
could be
Yeah.
that too. Like, I mean, we all do things like that to kind of get our foot in the door. But at the very least, that's temporary, right? I mean, this person's
Yeah.
doing this now. That's not going to last forever. Now, when
Right.
I started doing them for about $150. I think that was my bottom dollar, and I had some confusion because it's hard to figure out like what people are charging for this. So I think I did them for like $150. What I found was that at that price, I was doing a lot of them. Not
You're
every one
always
of them,
going back.
but it's like, when people, have some stuff wrong with their house, new or old, and for 150 extra dollars, they can have you come back, they're gonna do it a lot of times. And so I was finding that I was overrun with it, and I had to figure out a new game plan. And so, when we do houses, I mean, of course, everyone has prices that are per square foot, right? But, like, everyone also has a bottom dollar usually. Like, mine is 475, but there's a lot of guys that'll go a little bit cheaper than that. But, like, at some point, and even if you're talking about, let's just say for, you know, to make it simple here, let's just say everybody was at 475, or let's just talk about a $475 inspection for whatever square footage that is. Sometimes that's a really easy house with very few things wrong with it. Sometimes it's a absolute nightmare, but it's still 475 or whatever. And so I took that approach when it came to reinspects, and I was like, okay, I've got to have a bottom dollar that I can get out there for, and that's it. And then it kind of goes maybe up from there. But I chose half of the inspection fee, so it's kind of weird because like my bottom dollar is like 475, so it's like $237.50 or something like that. But that's what I charge. It's just 50% of what the original inspection fee was. And the thing is yeah, sometimes I go and do 5 things. Sometimes I was finding myself doing 25 things, but the fee is the same. And it's like, yeah, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. I get that, like, the person on the other end of that is paying for it, but that's just kind of what I found. And when I did that, the number of them I got was drastically lower. And I want to help everybody too. If they want a reinspect, I want to try to help them. I mean, they're a little bit annoying for a lot of reasons that we've already talked about, but I do still want to try to help them if they're truly wanting it. But if they want me to help them, it's going to cost a little bit of money because it is my time. And also, it is usually taking the place of what would be a full inspection fee. So I'm already losing whenever I show up to do this reinspect. I don't like to bring that up to the client because that sounds kind of crappy. but
Yeah.
I'm already losing by doing this. And so I've got to at least get it to, a point where I can like feel comfortable with that. And that's what I chose to do, which has helped me a great deal. But lately, when it came to new construction, I just felt like we were getting taken advantage of. And another pain point, I feel like, it's one thing when we're single man operators. But when we got other people working for us, that complicates things quite a bit. And so, what was happening was I felt like we were getting taken advantage of. My guys, man, it's fine. I ran the company. I was the only inspector for years. You want to run over me? No problem. But now all of a sudden, when you start running over my guys and you're like, well, can you look at these 50 items in this, because they said they're going to fix it all. And it's like, no, we need to set some ground rules. And so my ground rules, just like we get an amendment from realtors, I have started, this has only been about 30 days in the works, but we started to force buyers, look, no offense here, but if you want me to go back out for half the cost, I need a list of what you want done. And don't just tell me everything because I know the builder's not going to fix everything I put in my report.
Right.
So I need a list of things that negotiated repairs, what they said they're going to fix. I need a list of those, and we'll go back and look at those. Sometimes that's 5 things, sometimes that's 25 things, but I won't argue it anymore. That means now I don't have to go back and find all the defects in the report, spend all that extra time finding the defects in the report, and then make myself a list. I just go off of the list that you gave me. There's a paper trail. We're good to go. They don't like doing it. I can tell you that right now. But the way we've been putting it to them, and we say this from the beginning, when they call and say, how much is a reinspect? We're like, well, it's half the cost of the inspection. But we have to have a list for this. And if we don't have a list, it's a full fee. So far,
Yeah.
no one's paid the full
Mhm.
fee.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I know it's like you said with the abuse and then of course your time, you know, going back to Brad's point, when you're new, right, you're just starving for anything, right? You're trying to build relationships with realtors, you're trying to build relationships with clients, and you will over leverage yourself. You'll put yourself in positions where it will affect your bottom line. Now, my advice to new inspectors, maybe that are doing something like that, is okay, that's great, and that works out good for the agents, and it works out good for the clients, but how do you get from free to getting paid?
Yeah.
You know, and that's the big thing. And that's, I help guys get licensed and, kind of do the mentor thing here in Alabama. And one thing that consistently comes up with these people that want to do these ride alongs is they want to undercut pricing to get work. Everybody's done it, and I get it. But what I always try to tell them is it's like, okay, but you can't just all of a sudden wake up one day and you're the $350 guy, and your agents are used to that and your clients are used to that, and they're recommending you to their friends. Hey, he did this inspection for 350. And then their friend calls and you're all of a sudden the 475 guy, right? Now they're going to feel like you're trying to rip them off or take advantage of their clients if you're the realtor. So my only advice to people would be is obviously everybody's in charge of setting their own prices, but you have to think big picture. A
That's
lot of times people,
really good advice.
contractors do it, home inspectors do it. I mean, every trade does it, but you never want to be beholden to the short money. You have
Now,
to think big picture. And I think, and like I said, I fell into that trap when I first got started. There were no mentors around here. I went to a meeting. I tried to get some advice from a few home inspectors, and they're like, "Yeah, man, that I'd love to help you with that if you pay for an inspection." And I was kind of in the weeds with it. I didn't really know which way to go with it, and a lot of it was figuring it out. But luckily, I started talking to some people throughout the state, not just in my area, and a lot of people smarter than me really kind of guided me towards, kind of to Matt's point, charging for your time. So, I do live in an area where it's not uncommon for me to drive 120 or so miles a day. I
Yeah,
cover two counties. It's a lot of driving.
did that in DC.
And, if I do a house an hour away, well, that's 2 hours of drive time now.
Mhm.
2 hours of drive time plus whatever I'm doing with the inspection. And then kind of going back to Matt's point, some days you're the hammer, some days you're the nail, but somewhere in the middle is where you need to be. We can't always get the good houses, and then we don't ever want to be just where we're stuck doing bad houses. But to be profitable, you have to kind of position yourself to where on the easy days, that helps you make up for the hard days. And kind of like Matt's saying, whether you're doing half the fee or you've got a price structure similar to mine, you have to be thinking big picture with that, because if you're the low price guy or you're the free guy like I was, guess what? Everybody wants a reinspection. And before you know it, your days are 14, 15 hours long. And then we haven't even talked about the amount of phone calls that comes with these reinspections, where you have to start talking to the listing agent, talking to the buyer's agent, talking to the buyers,
The buyer's
all of
dad.
that's, yeah, all that's 45 minutes to an hour that's added into that you didn't even see coming. So there's a lot of nuance to it. And I really think it's something that as an industry probably doesn't get talked about enough, because it's a pitfall. Like you said, you want to help your clients, you want to maintain your relationships with these agents, but there has to be a happy medium to where you're not hemorrhaging time, because when you get successful, you've got the money. Time is then the commodity. You just don't have the time. You're struggling to find time for stuff. And, we've all been in situations where, we're trying to get enough money for things, whatever it is, what we want to do. And years ago, I had this old man. He tried to explain some stuff to us. We were dumb kids. We didn't know any better. But this guy worked for my dad. He was like 90 years old. And he said, "Son, I've seen people chase money, and it's like a hill that you climb." And he said, at the top of that hill, it's a point, right? And at the top of that point, you have the perfect amount of time and the perfect amount of money. But once you start going down the other side of it, now you're running out of time. It doesn't matter how much money you have. And he said that at 90 years old, he had never met anybody that was able to stay on top of that point for very long, because you end up going over the other side. And once your business starts to become successful, like, there is no substitute. Like, you can't replace that time. And if you're not managing it properly, it will slip away from you. I mean, anybody that I've ever talked to, small business owners, that is their biggest problem. It's managing time. It's not money anymore. The money takes care of itself, but it's the time. And it's something you really have to protect.
No,
And
that's good,
that's
man.
some
Now,
serious words of wisdom right there.
two things. So you're talking about business growth. Is it possible that you could save that time by outsourcing the reinspection to one of the slower guys on your team? Not slower as in process, but he's not, his book of business isn't fully developed yet. Say he's a newer inspector, newer hire, whatever. Is it possible to task him with that reinspect, or would you prefer for it to be your eyes or the inspector who inspected it the first time that goes out and does that
I
reinspection?
I got to weigh in on this. This is actually one of the things I wanted to talk about for sure. But I mean, I feel like, first of all, I just want to address, like, I love that you were talking about think the big picture, and I just want to just dial back to that for 1 second and talk about, like, and we've said this, but I want to say it in these terms, like, if you're the guys doing reinspection free or super cheap, you're doing that to get business, to get realtors, and all of a sudden, whenever you say I'm not sure they're not free anymore. They're actually $250. You just lost a realtor. So all that work you did to get them, it actually you didn't do anything because it's just going to go away the second and then you got to rebuild again at that 250. So anyway, I just want to say that, just throw that in there. But yeah,
No,
so
that's
when you got
100% right.
a team, it starts to complicate things a little bit. Okay, when you've got if it's one thing if you're a solo man operation, it's your time, but it's your guys' time now. This is where I think it gets complicated because your guys are going to get a cut of the inspection. Usually, some people do hourly rates or whatever, but like usually guys get a cut, whether it's 30, 40, 50%, whatever it is. And so it's like, your company stands to do better if they're out there doing full inspections. Your company's not doing great if they're doing re-inspections. And let me tell you, your guys ain't doing great either, because if they got to make a cut, let's say even if it's 50% of $250 to go out and do a job in lieu of a full job, that's like $125. That's like nothing. They go out there and make $125. They got to drive to who knows where, spend an hour and a half or something like that, and drive to who knows where back. This is a bit of a problem, and I found like it wasn't lucrative for them, and they weren't making enough. So I had to actually, I ended up raising their cut significantly so that my company was making enough to cover the overhead of that job, and they were basically making the rest. And that seems to have solved that problem for me. But the way that I tried to solve that problem, the way I try to solve it even still today, is instead of ditching the reinspects off on my guys, I try to take them on myself. And that way that cuts down on my workload. And now I don't have to worry about what cut they make of that low cut. And I get the lighter workload. And and I'm okay with that. Because I mean, like if they go out and like I say, for simplicity, let's just say they make 50% of a regular job. Well, if I go and do their reinspect, then I'm getting the company's getting that same
Right.
cut. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So it seems like that's the way I felt like it was best for me to handle it. Now, problem is I get booked up pretty fast. So I don't oftentimes have the availability to do that, but I have been trying to do that. And as of late in the last several months, since things have been quite busy, I've been trying to do one a day instead of two a day, which allows me that flexibility in my schedule to take on some of that stuff. But we don't have a great deal of it because our prices are not exactly cheap.
Yeah.
So
Now, are
Yeah,
you saying the base for your guys, their split is 50% already on a
no,
job? Or
no, but I mean, like, I was
okay.
just using that as an example.
Okay, because
But,
yeah, no, it makes sense. There's a lot of companies out there that because the company provides the car, the benefits, the everything that the split that goes to the inspector is like 35%.
can you imagine
So
doing a re-inspect at 35%?
right.
yeah,
I
of
mean, they're not gonna
125 or
wanna do
whatever.
it.
Yeah. No, it's
I know that,
nuts.
like, it comes with the territory, right? We gotta do it, but it's like, how do you convince somebody to do that well and to stay enthusiastic about their job when they're making such little money?
Exactly. That was the point I was going to say is that for morale, right? If you've got a guy that's taking a cut, for something like that, sure, they might look at the occasional easy afternoon as a plus. They didn't make as much money, but I'm not working till 6, 7 o'clock. But if you start piling it on them, then that percentage better be considerable because now, they're taking home less. And that's a tightrope. I mean, it really is a tightrope. Now, kind of like, uh, Matt was talking about doing them himself. The other thing is, this is, we could all do the same house, the three of us. We could inspect the same house and see things differently between the three of us.
Yeah.
And I have gone back before to do a reinspection on a house, and I'm like, I'm not seeing it. But it's not that, the first inspector missed it or whiffed on it or didn't inspect it right. But now that it's different, like I can't tell what was done because, I see the other photo, but without the context actually being there, I might not be looking at this thing the way that I'm supposed to. So that's tough too. It doesn't come up a lot, but with certain things, when they've gone back and repaired stuff, it's like, where on this wall did you see this wet spot? Because now everything's been painted and I'm lost. So when it comes to that, sometimes continuity is a plus. And then two, clients, if they're happy with the inspector the first time, sometimes they want that inspector back regardless. They just don't trust other people. But that's a tightrope and it's tough. I mean, I've dealt with it as a single person operator and then as having other inspectors working for me. But that's one of those things where, again, I wish I could tell you like here's the balance, but it's just tough to find.
It
Well,
really
and
is.
I want to clarify because we do have some negative Nancy's out there that will probably listen back to if they only heard this one portion. Because some of the keyboard warriors they don't listen to anything at all, as we discovered this past week with some comments, Matt. But
Yeah.
if y'all are listening and want to immediately come after Matt, Brad, or me and just be like, well, if you hadn't missed it the first time, you wouldn't need to reinspect. We ain't talking about that. We're
That's not
talking
it.
about yeah, we're talking about specifically when there's been repairs that have been done,
Yeah.
and we've been
And
asked to come back and check the work.
Yeah, and I can see that continuity. Like if your eyes didn't see it the first time, then it might be difficult for you to navigate the second time. I think that that's a risk personally with my company and with my communication with my guys and with as infrequently as this comes up for us because of our prices. That's a risk I'm willing to take. Um, there's very little, like you said, it's kind of a rarity anyway. Very little that I'm going to show up at and be like, So where was this problem? You know what I mean? Like I've seen
Well,
thousands of homes, so it's like I can
and
pretty much pinpoint them.
well, I tell you where it really comes into play for us is like a roof.
Sure.
So let's say you've got a worn, damaged shingle. Well, obviously, you're not taking some big wide angle photo of the
Okay.
whole roof because now you can't see the damage. So the photo is kind of close up. And then you just find out that it's on the right side of the roof. And then you show up and it's like, this is a pretty big roof. We're
Yeah.
on this right side. But
Well,
when I've done the inspection, a lot of times we're going back within a week or 2 weeks, after the inspection, I can remember.
yeah.
But I've even done it to some of the houses where I've inspected, I'll go back like a month. There was one last year that was a bank owned property. It took them 2 months to get it sorted out. And when they called me back to do the reinspection, I was like, Jesus, y'all bought that thing? Okay, sure.
Yeah.
I'll go back. But then when I went back, it was like, hold on a minute. Now let me think, where did I see this? So that it's the context of the photos too, because that's the other thing is, you know, I've had builders gripe about this before. They don't want me putting chalk on the roofs or doing blue tape on things, but it's like, how do I show you the defect from far away when I couldn't see it unless I was 5 feet from it? Do you really, how can we find that middle ground? But sometimes that's tough.
I got two things about that. Okay. So one, when it comes to when I go back to do these reinspects, first of all, I do a lot of times just try to look at it with a fresh set of eyes. So as if I was the first one inspecting. Okay, you had damaged shingles on the right side of the roof. I'm just going to look at the right side of the roof. I don't see damaged shingles. All okay. Everything's okay. Everything was performing fine. Everything was fine on the day of inspection. Whatever. So I try to do that for one. Number two, I actually have a we have the way we do, especially roofs. Maybe nothing else. But the way that we do roofs and defects with roofs is pretty specific, and I learned to do this. This was really for me, but I actually do take a wide angle shot and then a close up shot. So we find nails that are out of place a lot. A
Sure.
nail
Yeah.
that's lower on a shingle than it's supposed to be and it's exposed. Well, I mean that's a literal needle in a haystack. If you just tell them, "Hey, you see this picture of this nail right here, and that's it." So what I do and this is my strategy. I go and I take a wide angle shot and I make sure that nail, I can see it from afar, but you just can't see it in the picture. But I make sure it's in the center of the screen. So when I take that picture, that nail's right in the center of that wide angle shot. Then I go in for a close shot and show what the problem is, put an arrow on it and put close up view. And so we
Well, it could be the same
actually
thing with like
do this.
insulation in an attic, right? Like if you could take one spot like a bare area. It's like how are you going to find that up there? Like if you're
Yeah.
doing
And
that,
so
Exactly.
so there, if you try to think about it like whenever you're doing the inspection, like if I had to track this down, what can I do to make that like easier? And so there's oftentimes something like on the roof. I will try to make sure because even the wide angle shots, like okay, you got a wide angle shot, but still a bunch of shingles. Well, I'll make sure there's a furnace flue or there's
Right.
a this or
Reference
that, or you
point.
can see the house in the background. And I'm like, okay, that gives me my
some
angle.
visual
Um,
clues. Yeah,
I
yeah.
do the same thing when I'm in the attic or when I'm taking thermal pictures sometimes, especially occupied homes. I go in there, I'm scanning here. There's a bunch of missing insulation above that cow picture. I make sure that cow picture is in that picture. You know what I mean? Like, and that I try to do that. Even if it's a new construction house, I'll make sure windows or like a corner of a door or something is there. And that way, if I had to track it down, I can go track it down. So I actually do approach my photos in my report with the idea that I might have to track this down again, only because I have had to.
That's smart.
Yeah. Well, that's when how many times have you done this? I know you got guys that work for you. You're training guys, right? And they're in a room. Let's just say there's a loose receptacle. And what do? They take a close up picture of that receptacle.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not the money shot, dude. I need to see a corner, a door, a window, something so I know where this is at. We got 3 plugs on this wall, you know. So yeah, frame of reference is good for that. And like to your point, it's sometimes it's a needle in a haystack. But I do the same thing on a roof where I've had to talk to builders before. Okay, I'm looking at this picture now, right? If we look in the background, we can see a plumbing vent.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, we got plumbing vents all over this house. And it's like, I'm just trying to get you close, brother. I can't do it
Yeah.
for you.
You got like 12 of them. Okay. So now we've
Right.
narrowed it down to 12 spots.
Yes. I'm just trying to get you in the ballpark. I can't hit it out of here for you.
Man,
But
I
yeah,
want
that,
to
that does come up.
Brad, I want to touch on something that you said recently, or just a bit ago in the conversation, which was when the buyer calls you back, you go, "Wait, you really bought that place?" See, this is something that the World Cup has given me some appreciation for, right? The VAR review intervention, right, where you've got that referee that's in the booth watching the replay back, and he's like, wait, I'm calling a late penalty on that, and it's 5 minutes later in the game, but he's been watching in slow motion back here. I wish we could do that for buyers, dude. I wish
Yeah.
we could intervene with some of these people and just be like, no, VAR review, you are not getting that piece of crap. Like, absolutely not.
I just so recently within the past week, I did a second house for this couple. They're really nice, but they got hung up on some things with the first house that I did that they shouldn't have got hung up on. And, I'm not trying to talk somebody into buying a house, but whenever they tell me their concerns and if you're looking at houses within a certain price range, built within a certain time or in a certain area, there's deficiencies that are going to come up at this house, the neighbor's house, every house on the street, right? Just based on age or location. And I really tried to tell them, guys, these are not big problems. This is the house. Well, I do the second house for them. It was worse. And I knew it would be. It was worse. And when they called, I don't have a filter, but when they called, they were like, "Hey, we wanted to talk to you about that house." And I said, "Yeah, you should have bought the first one, shouldn't you?" That was the
Did
first
you
thing I
really?
said. Because, and then they're like, "Well, what do you think about this neighborhood or this house?" And it's like, guys, I can already tell you that house was built in the 60s. I'm looking at the listing photos right now. Nothing's been updated. So we're going to have cast iron plumbing. We're going to have older electrical. We run the risk of having older equipment, older roof. I'm looking at the photos of the roof, right? This is the same issues, just in an older package, and I tell people that all the time. Like, I'm trying to save you from yourself. Because the one thing that, I don't think that buyers and real estate agents even appreciate about home inspectors is that we see a lot of houses. And it's not like we just look at them and say, "Oh, this is pretty, this is cute." We see them for what they are, and I can look at a photo in a listing and I know what I'm going to find when I get to that house. I could probably fill out a third of that report before I ever get there. And, this is not to discredit agents. I know that they look at a lot of houses too, but they don't look at them for as long as we do. So, on average, if I'm doing 400 or 450 inspections a year by myself, right? That means I'm spending 4 hours in these houses on average. And you multiply that by 450, my God, that's a ton of hours. I'd love to sit here and spring that number on everybody, but spoiler alert, I'm not great at math. But real estate agents and then buyers too, they're only there for 30 minutes. And then, of course, like the people buying these houses, they're looking at them from the perspective of whose room is this going to be? Where are we going to put the Christmas tree? Like, is everything going to fit? They don't have time to look at this stuff like we do. And it really, like, I think that that's part of our job is trying to save these people from either making bad decisions or like, I can't tell you how many times I've tried to talk somebody into a house just because I know that based on their price point, I haven't seen a lot of other houses out there that's going to be better.
Yeah.
But again, it's not my job, and it's just, that's tough. That's the toughest part of this because we're not qualified to give that real estate advice.
Right.
Well, I
Much
mean,
like
we
you
are,
were
but we're
saying
not.
in regards to builders, I've said the same thing for years. Builders, how many houses, like completed homes, does a builder see in a year? I mean, I can tell you right now, it's not 400. So I mean,
Depends on the size of their subdivision, I suppose. Yeah.
well, I mean, like finished homes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like how many times, and especially, okay, how many times have they spent 4 hours in a finished home? Like it's not anywhere close to what we're doing. And so, like, I remember having this conversation early on with some people, and they were like, "Well, the builder says this, the builder says that." Yeah, I know, but like, and I'm not trying to, I'm not necessarily just trying to be the builder's worst enemy here, but it's like, well, I mean, maybe I am, but I'm not trying to act like I know more
Disparage them.
than
Yeah.
them. But
Yeah.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
experience does mean something. I see 400 homes at the rate of about 4 hours each a year, and a builder can't say that. They can't say that in about
Especially
maybe 5 years, you know?
especially like a spec builder or a custom builder that's, doing 2 or
Yeah,
3
they're a
homes a year at best.
couple. Yeah,
Now when you're talking about the bigger builders, maybe 40 or 50 a year
right.
for per superintendent. And then that's briefly though, because if they're finishing a house maybe, once a month, if they've got 2 a month going or something like that, but still it's for, the context of it. That's something, like builders around here. Now, I know it's easy to beat up on builders, but around here, over probably the past 3 years, a lot of these builders have like really taken great strides to be better. Not that their business model was so bad before, but like weeding out different contractors, subcontractors, and stuff working on these jobs, actually taking feedback from home inspectors, not just me, and applying that moving forward so that we're not Groundhog's Day. We're not looking at the same things that's wrong every single day that we do these. And I really think, especially like even, going back to the topic of the whole thing, like the reinspection part of it, we're made out to be bad guys sometimes because we'll go back and look at these things and then the homeowner doesn't know because they've never had a water heater installed correctly. How do they know it's not installed right? And they just don't have the same context as us. And then, it's like, oh, well, that's not a big deal. So I posted a photo on Facebook the other day. It was a $1.4 million house that had a tankless water heater on the exterior. And there was like 5 or 6 deficiencies just inside that tankless water heater. And, I remember when I did that inspection, the agent was like, well, it's been like that for 5 years. Well, right. But I've also seen houses that had water damage because they didn't seal up the enclosure on this tankless water heater. And when it leaked, it flooded the house. And that's the other thing is we're up against a wall where people like to say things like, well, it's not that bad. And it's like, you just haven't seen when it was that bad, because if you had that context, you would know that, yes, this is a very simple fix. But if it ever goes sideways, it's not going to be $100 fix anymore. It's going to be a $10,000 fix. And that's just the kind of stuff that we end up kind of getting pushback on. And I get it. But at the same time, like we just see a ton of houses. I've done at this point, over the past 9 years, over 3,000 inspections. I mean, in a real estate agent's lifetime, they'll probably never
Yeah,
sell or purchase 3,000 houses. And
right.
that's not a knock against them, because their processes when they're working on these things is, 3 weeks to a month, and they're working that deal a whole lot differently than we are. But when you really look at what we do on paper, I mean, we see a lot. And the other thing is too, is we're not hired to look for the good things. We're not hired to look for the positives. We're only there to look for the problems. And that in itself is draining
Dude,
sometimes.
can we do a series of videos where it's just on the good things? I want to see where Brad Zirlott actually goes in
It that would
and
be
and
terrible.
it's not tongue in cheek at all. It's just actually like that's actually some really great cabinetry. Man, look at how smooth that drawer opens right
So I
there.
did that one time. So people kept telling me, "Show us what it's supposed to do. Show us what it's
Oh yeah.
supposed."
Show us a
So
good house.
I did it on April Fool's Day. It was like 5 years ago, and I replay it every year, and it's like I walk up and I'm just like I open a drawer, I'm like, "This drawer works." You know?
You're like Damone from Fast
Like
Times at Ridgemont High. You're just like, isn't this great?
hey,
Yeah, it
my
works.
favorite one
That's
was when I was on the roof, and dude, I'm sitting there selfie with the phone, and I go, "This roof is okay." And it's just like I did that through the whole video. It's like, yeah, it's a terrible video,
yeah.
like, I mean,
Well,
Due
don't get me
South
wrong,
Brad
I do a
opining
bunch
on
of
tap.
videos on good stuff. So, you go to my
Yeah.
YouTube channel, check out videos on good stuff. I actually have good stuff videos. But, like, when it comes to, like, social media entertainment, man, the bad
Yeah.
stuff wins all the time.
well, I've been a smartass for so long on my
Yeah,
TikTok
people
and
wouldn't
things
believe
like
you.
that.
You think?
Like, I don't know that if I told people it was a good house that they'd believe me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They would treat it like, yeah, I know he's saying that, but there's got to be something wrong. Like I'd probably have to sit down with a lawyer and sign an affidavit that says, no, seriously, guys,
No.
this is a
Actually,
good
it's good.
house. Yeah. I know
That's
I
great.
I made a video a long time ago about it. And I started out with like this mocking voice. Show me a good house, Brad. And I'm like, well, here it is. This is it. Isn't this entertaining? Look. floors look good, the walls look good, the ceilings. Look
That's
at this door,
exactly
it
it.
works.
Watch
Isn't
this
this great,
door.
everybody?
Yeah.
This is what you wanted. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm doing a presentation tomorrow for some realtors. This is my first time doing a
Hey, me too.
presentation. All right, how many have you done? Because I might need some tips after
I
this.
haven't
But
done one in like 6 years, but this is the first. Well, I take that back. This is like the first time I've gone to buy breakfast at a real estate office in like
Oh,
6
okay.
years. But I've done a bunch of presentations for realtors and stuff, but mostly it's been like classes.
well, this one, that's pretty much what I'm going to talk to them about is they can't stand these long reports. And for anybody that doesn't know, we can't stand writing them, right? And I'm going to talk to them about 5 areas of the house that the seller could pay attention to before somebody like us shows up that could probably eliminate, so I go through like the roof, the plumbing, the electrical, the mechanical, the interior, things like that. And, I'm calling it death by 1,000 cuts because sometimes that's what these reports are. It's not that the house is bad, but it's just when you're overwhelmed by literally everything being wrong, where you can't even look at kitchen cabinets without a drawer that, is missing guides or a door that's hanging off the hinges. And that's what I'm trying to talk to them about is it's just you could eliminate half of what goes in these reports with these junk deficiencies if you just do a little TLC on the front end, right? But I don't know, that to me, if we could normalize that, my God, we could probably transform the industry. Because if I knew that on the front end that the seller was taking care of a lot of things before we ever got there, that's what I'd tell my clients. Guys, they've done a lot of work to this place. But, unfortunately, we go into these things and that's never the case.
Now, I
Perhaps
will
if they would
say
do
this
that,
is
like our re-inspections wouldn't be 25 items. They'd literally be 5 items and we
Yeah,
wouldn't have
5
to have this
items.
conversation.
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Now, and on that, there are some great agents, and I'm friends with some of them, where I know that they will almost handhold with the sellers, bring in their own tools, their own contractors, whatever, and they will get the house up to snuff first. It's few and far between. Props to those of you that do it. Seriously,
Yeah.
it
I've
helps a ton.
found that, I mean, obviously the veterans, right? I mean, we can't always dictate. I mean, we also had to start somewhere. So that's not a knock against anybody that's new. But yeah, I've got some agents like that where it's like, I've run into this problem before. Let me just go ahead and no, don't worry about it. I know a plumber.
Yeah,
You don't have to worry about replacing this water heater yourself. I know a guy. And those transactions do go smoothly as opposed to the ones where everybody's just trying to figure it out. And, I've try to work with some agents in the area just to kind of let them know and like tell them things. This is how I would fix it whenever I was doing that kind of stuff. But it's tough, man. And they're in the same boat. Imagine your job, everything's going smoothly. You've got this house under contract, and then along comes somebody like us, and we just blow it full of holes. And then all of a sudden we're like, what happened? It was did he looked at the right house? How long was he there? This report's so long. And, so I do feel for agents because, I wish we were talking about this earlier with another inspector, but, I would love to just go into a house and nod my head and be like, I'll be damned. This looks good. But unfortunately, that's just never the case.
It's not going to
yeah.
happen.
Well, thoughts and prayers for the brokerages that have to put up with both of you guys tomorrow. But I want to hear some stories afterwards. Seriously,
Behind enemy lines.
that's it.
I
And
just get to just like introduce myself and buy people breakfast. This time I don't have to do any of the dirty work.
no lunch and learn
I
stuff. Oh,
might as
that's
well just bring
awesome.
them breakfast.
Well, guys, help Brad out at the very least. Post
Yeah.
in the comments what you would be sharing at lunch and learns or presentations with brokerages,
Yeah.
and sound off of what you guys are doing for tackling the reinspect issue. Are you doing them at all? Are you doing like I do with septics and just don't do them? Just let somebody else handle that, or
Yeah.
or
I
do you
want to
have it?
know.
Yeah,
Please, if you guys, and because we can have this conversation again, I think, we've said this many times throughout the show tonight that this is a topic that doesn't get brought up enough in the industry. And so if we need to talk about this again, let's talk about this again. Let's hear your comments, your thoughts. Let's hear everything that you have to say about reinspects because I'm not an expert at it. Brad, I mean, you said you don't have it all figured out. I don't think any of us do. So let's get together.
Yeah,
No,
it's like
definitely.
trying to hit a moving target.
It is, man. Due South, Brad. It's always good having you on the show. Seriously, man. We
Appreciate it, guys.
appreciate you
You
being
guys are the
here.
best.
Yep, awesome. And thank you guys, everybody, so much for watching. We look forward to seeing you right here next time on
The ride along.